It's me, a 30-something-year-old woman living in Korea. I'm just an average office worker who died either from overworking, being hit by a truck, choking on something, or eating expired food. I suddenly wake up and find myself in the body of a villainess that only shows up twice from a story that I read once, yet somehow I remember the entire plot, as well as somehow know the villainess's backstory. Despite her being a minor character, she gets murdered or exiled for no reason by the end or middle of the story, and I don't want that. So I'm now going to be a generic shoujo protagonist who is oblivious and acts just like the female lead. When I meet the male lead and the other harem-adjacent characters, I'm super nice and interested in them, and treat them just like the female lead treated them, which is why they loved the female lead. Then the plot starts, at some sort of academy or at some kingdom story or whatever, and then the female lead, who is a commoner or the daughter of a baron or whatever, is introduced, and I'm ready to just fade into the background, and I'm super nice to her because I like her for some reason. But oh, turns out that she's actually a horrible person who hates me. Oh no, and she wants to hurt me, and the male leads will definitely take her side. I need to run away with the wealth that I've somehow accumulated. But wait, before I can run away, the two male leads confess their love to me. What's happened? They're supposed to love the female lead, even though I essentially took over the female lead's place in the story. Now I'm stuck between these two completely different men. How will I choose between this blonde guy and this black-haired guy? What should I do? Tell me this isn't the plot of every villainess story ever. You can't. Hey guys, super long intro today, I know, but I had to start it that way. Welcome or welcome back, I'm Cloudy. I know. I said I would be posting a video on Touch Starved this week, but I realized I still had a lot of work to do on the script and editing for that, so that video will be next week's upload. A quick little intermission, over 99% of people who watched my videos this past month are not subscribed. So, if you're watching this and you aren't subscribed, please do consider subscribing. It would really help the channel. Now, back to the video. Today we're going to be talking about the epidemic, or just explosion, of villainous isekai manhwas or novels. Now, I'm not trying to hate or say that people can't do what they want. I'm just commenting on something I've seen a lot of. So, villainous isekai originally started as a way to subvert the modern day person gets isekai'd or transmigrated and becomes a hero with a harem or whatever. It was meant to be focused on 1, a female lead instead of a male one, and 2, what if the main character wasn't a hero or the protagonist, but rather the villain or villainess? It was a really interesting idea that explored a lot of different moral issues and dynamics and had a lot of potential. But honestly, it's become very stagnant and boring lately. Everything is the exact same, and all the manhwas or novels just follow the same generic plot that I said in the intro. I'm not going to talk about one particular one because, again, I'm not trying to hate on these webtoons or the authors. They're just doing their thing. I'm more going to be talking about the general genre and how the subversion trope has just become its own kind of overdone category. And I'm also going to touch a little on the misogyny and toxicity that is present in a lot of these stories. To start with, there is just an absolute influx of these isekai manhwas. Literally every day a new one comes out with the same generic title. I transmigrated into the villainess, and now I'm being chased by the crown prince or the duke of the north or whatever. It's the same generic concept, the same generic characters. There's no subversion, there's no complexity. And normally that would be fine, because trash literature is allowed to exist, because it's fun to read once in a while. But I think it's a little different when you write the generic things using a trope that was literally designed to be the exact opposite of the genre, exact opposite of generic. It was meant to be interesting and different. I also have a few issues with a lot of the things in these stories that I'm going to go over. The first thing that bothers me is sort of the lack of reaction the female lead or the MC has. Like, you just died and realized that you're now in a different world, a world from a novel you once read, and you have no reaction? Not only that, but you're immediately able to accept your new reality. There's no break of her psyche or inability to comprehend. There's no denial. There's not even any instances or her just thinking of these people as characters. She just fully believes these are real people and is just somehow okay with everything, not even slightly traumatized by her death or anything, just ready to go. And somehow, even though she has died and only read this novel maybe once, she remembers everything. And also, another thing, even if she is being reincarnated or transmigrated, the character is still a woman in her 30s. Yet, even when she's by herself, she acts like a child or teenager. There's no explanation given that, oh, she's a child, she just has her past life memories, or, oh, she remembered everything, but as she grows in this world, she slowly forgets. Like how a lot of kids who claim to remember their past lives will eventually forget those details. None of that. She just acts like a kid when she's supposed to be a grown woman, and then she proceeds to act like a kid with other kid characters and with the male lead who also happens to be young. And then there's the whole romance bit with this woman who, let's be clear, is stated as being 30 years old with a child, a 12-year-old or something. It's just weird. There's no reason for that. You can just have her be a child with her past life's memories. You don't have to make it weird and have her be like predatory towards this young boy. Secondly, so many villainous isekais have the female lead as being the villainess, or like the MC as being the villainess, except they don't act like the villainess, and they do everything that the original, like, female lead did, but then somehow she expects the male leads to love the female lead, and this is just the most frustrating thing in this, because how? It's not like she's trying to compartmentalize and views them as characters, because none of these novels or webtoons ever do that. They have her act like she believes that they are real people and that she's now living a new life, but then she still thinks that they will choose the female lead over her. Now, I've seen some really well-written novels or webtoons where the plot or the will of God or the author or something sort of compels the characters to act a certain way and ensure that the plot is followed. But the majority of these stories do not have that concept. They just add her being stupid for no reason, just so they can have this moment where she tries to run away so that they can add this angst in there. Anytime she sees the male leads interact with the OG female lead, or anytime the male lead is sweet to her. And speaking of the OG female lead, either she is super sweet and ditzy, or she's a total bitch. And I want to talk a little bit about the misogyny in this, because it's so like typical 2000s media where the other girl is a bitch or awful, and so the main character is justified in their actions, or the original female lead is like dumb, so she's not as interesting as the MC is, so the guys aren't interested in her, but they like the MC because the MC is not like other girls. I feel like OI Villainess Isekai is basically just the modern day equivalent of your average YA novel from back in the day. The toxicity also that the male leads have, whether they're either super possessive or creepy, or the MC is super creepy or nosy. So many webtoons where the male lead kills the original villainess or are super abusive or cruel, and instead of there being a separation from those people, the MC oftentimes chooses the toxic guy over like the second male lead, who is obviously a better fit. Also, I don't know much about economics, but somehow the female lead is a genius who knows how to manage her own business. She's a girl boss and revolutionizes the industry of whatever it is that she's doing. Somehow, she accumulates a lot of money or invests or something, even though previous to this life, she was just supposed to be like a basic random office worker. I don't even know. Like, the business and her being so rich, just illogically, she's just rich because she starts a business or she uses her modern knowledge. I just feel like it doesn't make sense. Somehow, that's the most Mary Sue thing about these novels. It's actually kind of sad because this trope started as a way to, again, subvert the original hero MC and your generic fantasy plot. It was an attempt to try to make more complex female leads, to focus on them, and more complex characters in general. You know, have a more nuanced and three-dimensional plot and storyline where the characters are human and have a lot of complexities in their characters. Exploring the idea that the main character is a villain and all the issues or the moral dilemmas that come with that, the potential story that could evolve evolve from having a main character that isn't a good guy, and additionally with the added feminist perspective of the main character being a villainess in particular, and how the world or story would change with that in mind. But it's just turned into the same tired trope as before, where there is just flat one-dimensional characters, no interesting plot, and just your same boring YA novel type of beat. And I acknowledge that a lot of these things are due to cultural influences and the unfortunate fact that our world is just a fairly misogynistic place. But I really wish there were more well-written villainous isekais, because I love this trope and I love the potential it has. And when it's executed well, it is incredible. For example, a few webtoons/manhwas that follow this trope that I think are great are Death is the Only End for the Villainess. I think the plot is so interesting. Penelope is such an intriguing and complex main character who also is not just trying to appeal to the male leads, she's actively making her own decisions. And also, she understands and feels genuine empathy for the original Penelope, which is so different from the typical MC hating the evil villainous character. It's such a refreshing and heart-wrenching read, and it does the trope really well in my opinion. Even the OG female lead, I think the story of her and how everything plays out is a very interesting concept, and it's something that I haven't really seen before. Keeping things vague as not to spoil anything for anyone. Another really, really well-written one is Beware the Villainess. That is a true subversion of the trope. Slight spoilers ahead. Not only does Melissa completely go against the original plot, she flips it over her head. She breaks the traditional heteronormative idea of a relationship with her and Nine, and also don't forget her relationship with Yuri, who is the original female lead, the OG FL who is trapped in this cycle, but then she gets saved by Melissa. Melissa doesn't end up with any of the original male leads. She says screw them. She feels mad for the OG Melissa and makes peace with her. She fights against the author's will and is just a complete flip of the genre, and I adore her for it. Beware of the Villainess is one of, if not the best villainous isekai manhwa I have ever read. Also, I have to mention the manhwas where the MC is actually a villainess, and one is The Way to Protect the female lead's older brother. I don't know if it's The Way to Protect or The Way to Save, but one of those, along with a couple others. The ones where the female lead is actually cruel or evil, even if she's not as evil as she could be, are so good. And as strange as The Way to Protect the female lead's older brother is, I really enjoy Roxana's character. I think she's a very cool character, and I think honestly all that weird shit in the manhwa side, it has a very interesting plot. I really like the family politics and that internal family struggle. I think it's very different from the typical OI manhwa, and it was very, very intriguing. I think the oversaturation of this trope speaks to a larger conversation of an almost decline of creativity and decline of innovation. I feel like in general, not just in this genre or trope, but in media in general, there is just such a death of creativity. And I've talked about this in videos previous to this, so I'm not going to ramble about it too much. But I think like a trope that was meant to be about complex characters, that was meant to sort of explore that more nuanced way of thinking, and the fact that it turned into something that is very, very generic and basic, I think is just such a huge eye-opener to how media is just becoming way more basic and one-dimensional. It feels like everything is, I wouldn't say dumbed down, but it feels like everything is just very boring. Everything is the same. There's no creativity, there's no imagination, there's no uniqueness in media, and there's nothing that is actually changing the genre. There's nothing that is subverting any tropes. Everything just is meant to be, palatable to everyone. There's nothing that is actually unique for people to see, and I think that that's really sad. It sucks, especially because I think villainous isekai are such a good concept. Like, it's such an interesting concept. I think that, like I said, the ones that are done really well, they are incredible reads, and they really cause you to think about a lot of different things. And I wish that studios, and I wish that more people would start to look into not being afraid to take risks with plot and not being afraid to take risks with different characters and ideas. Because I also think that a lot of people, because now content is monetized in the way that it is, and a lot of these, actually most of these manhwas are paid and therefore a paid audience, I think a lot of authors tend to be afraid to put out anything that is not appealing to the masses. But I think you need to learn to sort of take risks with the things that you're doing, because innovation doesn't happen when you're comfortable or when you're in that same bubble. It happens when you want to break out of it. It happens when you go out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think that that's kind of what we need with, writing, with literature, with TV shows, with movies, with media in general. And again, I want to end this video by saying, I'm not trying to hate. I would be a hypocrite. I acknowledge that a lot of these things are done for fun by these authors, but a lot of this, like I said earlier, is paid content, and I feel like I am not trying to criticize one specific author or one specific thing. I'm more trying to talk about the genre as a whole and how it's sort of just done a complete, we tried to do a 180 so that we would do a different thing, but it just feels like we've done like a 360 and we're just right back where we started. And maybe that speaks to the rise of a lot of different things in the world. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that the trope has gotten really oversaturated? Do you think that it's kind of disappointing how everything is the same? Also, what are your guys' recommendations for good villainous isekai? I gave you some of the ones that I enjoyed. Leave some in the comments. Let's all give each other good suggestions. Yeah, as always, my Ko-fi and Instagram links are going to be in the description box below. If you liked this video, feel free to comment on what you think. I love comments. I think they're great. If you liked this video, like and subscribe for more if you have any suggestions or anything like that. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!